My name is Richard Dana. I'm the visual artist and a member of the McLean Project for the Arts Board of Directors. And it's my great pleasure and privilege to interview David Sturtevant, whose work I quite like, and I'm eager to have some of his thoughts about his work and his journey as an artist. David, I'd like to start by asking you just a bit about your background, how you became an artist, a bit about your journey.
Sure. And it's great to be here. I'm excited to be talking to you, Richard, too, because I think there are some things in our background maybe that we have in common. I would say, so as a sort of overarching way to begin talking about my background, I think I would say that I've always, as long as I can remember, been drawing and painting.
Really?
And in one form or another. And I think what I would say sort of changed for me at a certain point. So leaving college, I was, sort of starting down different career paths at different times, began working in art museums, which was obviously connected to one of my interests, but was always painting sort of on the side of what I was doing. Moved to San Francisco to work at SF MoMA out there, and was kind of living and breathing in an environment. So San Francisco is a great city for art. It's just everywhere. And the light is beautiful. So was sort of, it just re-sparked something in a kind of a different way. So that's where I kind of began really taking my painting much more seriously. So was, got a studio space and was showing, and so doing a lot more, showing a lot more. And then I've sort of kept up in that respect then in the time since I've shifted careers. Now I teach art, but I still obviously paint then. It's not my full-time career, which I guess is the difference. You pivoted from having a separate career to making this your career. I haven't gotten there yet.
Well, you will, I hope. Let's talk a bit about your creative process. Are you doing it on site with your buildings, or is it photographs, or do you have preconceived images, or are they made up, or some combination of all?
Yeah, some combination of all is probably the best way to describe it now. And I would say when I was in school, so I can back up, maybe that's another piece of my background too, as an undergraduate public policy major at Swarthmore College, I added painting as a double major. But when I was in school, was always, teachers always encouraged us to work from life when possible. So that was kind of, my background was to go out in the field and paint. When I had kids, my time was structured differently, and my schedule worked around theirs. So I found myself painting in the, sort of in the evenings with lights rather than out in the world. So I started collecting images more. And at first that was a real challenge to try to shift my way of thinking. But I actually found it incredibly liberating, and it's been it sort of opened a whole lot of new doors about not necessarily being sort of stuck with what's in front of you, but rather finding ways to, combine things or layer things in different ways, or edit images in ways that I hadn't thought of before. I totally understand why teachers sort of push the idea of working from life, but I think with enough experience, you can still bring life to working from photographs.
That's interesting, though, that you had a bit of a difficult transition when you were sort of forced to because of the kid. It was really sort of a different way of thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. And I sort of remember the idea of being, I had a basement studio at the time, being sort of stuck because I wasn't out doing it, but I knew that I had ideas and I had seen things, and so started, collecting photos more and, pinning them up on a wall, but realizing also the different ways of being able to combine things was expanded the possibilities.
So even as I really love your compositions, the first thing that really struck me when I was looking at your work was your use of color, and it's even as some of it is muted, it still has a very sort of saturated, sort of lush feeling to me. And it can be within a single painting. The color strikes me as both bold and subtle. Some of it's bold, some of it's subtle, or there's just a really sort of interesting mix that in your use of color. I'm assuming color is a pretty darn important part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate the comment too. I mean, I think it's, you know, I do find that the way, you know, light bounces around on something, I think what I'm looking, you know, is it the light or is it the color? It's such a good question. What it is that I'm sort of seeing and responding to in something like that. But, you know, it's, so I paint with oils, and I find that oil paints really are, for me anyway, the easiest way to kind of to sort of work with the expanse of colors and layer. You know, you can layer transparent layers on top of opaque layers. So you're, you know, what you're talking about with the sort of, is it this color or is it that color, is something that I think I look for, and look for ways to do that. And the oil paint is sort of the easiest medium for me to achieve that.
Within a this is in no way pejorative, but within a you've sort of limited a bit in terms of what you're doing with the buildings, and in doing that, it seems like you also have great freedom, and you're really interestingly playing around with space and structures and pushing it so that it's both realistic and not. It sticks in my mind. There's one painting, it's sort of a horizontal painting just of red buildings, which I don't think that's something you saw in nature.
Yeah, right.
Out in the world, but
yeah, no, and I love to hear you say that too. That's that kind of the intersection of where something is sort of understandable or recognizable, and where it's sort of disintegrated into something that's abstract. That's exactly, you know, I know that I'll lean one way or the other at that intersection, but that's exactly the kind of place. I mean, I think, you know, I think about what's most interesting to me to look at in painting, and I think that's part of it, is finding something that can sort of anchor what you're looking at, but also give you something to sort of go back and see there's something more to it, or there's something else there. And I like the ambiguity also of, you know, thinking about if there's light falling across a building, is it, you know, I love the time of day when it's long raking shadows, but is it a morning or is it an evening? You know, even a simple question like that is, there's sort of raises the broader question about, is it sort of a dawn of something or the dusk of something, too, which I like.
So do you have narratives then in your work?
I would say I probably do. As I'm painting, I'm thinking in a way. I can't swear to what anyone else would see, or if they would be able to understand sort of what that narrative might be. But, you know, certainly finding a place to paint, you know, if there's a you know, a shop, I'll go around to the back of the shop where the you know, the bins are and where the light is bouncing around back there, and take the photo. And if that's the place that I'm looking at, you know, I'm thinking about the sort of the life of the building in not its presentation form, but in the way it's actually used by the people who are in and out of there every day. And so I'll be thinking about that as I'm painting, but I don't know if that comes through, but it's important to me as I'm doing it.
Well, there is an ambiguity to the work, and it's obviously a bit ambiguous for you too. And I mean, for my abstract work, I will think, well, it could be about this or that, and it could not. But
well, and that's what I love looking at your work too, is that there is something that's recognizable, or I think it is, but then I look again, and that's exactly it. It's being able to look back and look again and see something that's different or surprising.
So unfortunately, we're running out of time. So very quickly, I want to say that, you know, a lot of adjectives popped into my head when I was looking at your work, from bold, evocative, contemplative, lush, beautiful, but melancholic. but also Hopperesque, just I couldn't quite come up with the word, because it's just, it doesn't look like Hopper, it just has a feeling a bit of some of Hopper's work. So I actually Googled Hopper and Wikipedia'd him, and I saw this quote, and it really struck me as similar. It's, your work can be subdued drama out of a commonplace subjects layered with a poetic meaning. And
that's a neat quote. Yeah,
it is. Google, I mean, Wikipedia, and it's up there. But quickly, what are you trying to convey to the audience, or communicate, or is it a feeling, or?
Yeah, I would say there's a feeling, more so than a sort of a thing. I'm not trying to necessarily paint a thing. So I like the idea of thinking about the drama. When I think of Hopper, I think of sort of personal dramas in terms of the way he uses figures to show, whatever the drama is. But I like the idea of sort of trying to evoke the feeling of what a place is. And, some of the subject matter that I'm looking at is, sort of the back, like I said, of a warehouse building or something. And so many of these buildings have a history. So trying to sort of connect and feel that history, but some of them are also right on the edge of having a new future where they're going to be, turned into condos or something. But there's the idea of that feeling of sort of time, changing time, and which time we're in. I think, I guess what I'm after is absolutely a feeling more than sort of a representation.
As you're talking, I mean, I would say, to me, it's what you do is an amazing job of creating a sense of space, of place, rather. I mean, this is you get a different feelings from it, but different paintings, but there's a sense of place there that's really good. But
yeah,
unfortunately, wish we could go on, but time is the tyrant here. So again, thank you so much. Congratulations for being in ArtFest, and
thank you. It's a great honor. It's a great event too. So I always enjoy it.